integrating climate best practices into the classroom, incorporate climate change into the curriculum, subject integration, and interdisciplinary approach. So to embed climate topics across subjects like science, geography, and social studies, or to combine STEM education with social and ethical discussions about sustainability. There is two ways, and this is basically two of them. So example is, in science, to study the greenhouse effect, renewable energy, or carbon cycles, which may come as obvious, but also to be able to integrate climate best practices into subjects that really has nothing to do with climate, like global policies, social studies. If we have a social study class, maybe we can give a topic of global policies like the Paris Agreement, or to examine climate justice and get the topic of climate change into other subjects. Even when it comes, for example, to mathematics, maybe in mathematics, you can insert climate change to calculate the carbon footprints and do some calculations related to climate change. And then maybe we can have to study how much is the effect, what is the effect, what goes on there. I think that climate is one of the subjects that can be integrated into any subject in school. I don't know if you agree or not. Please do write in the chat box. We can also have different ways of integrating climate best practices, one of which is encouraging hands-on learning. So eco-friendly projects, gardening and composting, energy audits. So conduct audits of the school's energy and resource consumption, encouraging students to propose improvements. Giving students a chance to have a hands-on learning is quite fun for them, and it's quite different, because if we keep a complex topic such as climate change based in a notebook that the students would open and close when the bell rings, I don't think that it will be very interesting. But if we give them activities that is hands-on and they get to learn from this activity, that would be very interesting. Thankfully, for artificial intelligence, we can also mention the use of technology and, of course, simulations. So VR, virtual reality, using it to simulate climate scenarios such as the impacts of rising sea levels or deforestation, putting the student in a place that they can visually see the effect of climate change, the way that the sea levels are rising, deforestation, and so on, could make it become actually a very real topic. Interactive apps, on the other hand, to employ apps and online platforms to calculate carbon footprints or simulate climate change models. And of course, digital storytelling, encouraging students to create videos or infographics about climate solutions with maybe a prize in the end, a kind of challenge, so that they really get into it and they do their readings. Other ways is to promote action through local community projects. So to collaborate with local environmental organizations, to engage students in real-world climate initiatives, such as cleanup drives or tree planting campaigns, building community partnerships to host guest lectures or workshops with environmentalists and climate scientists. We can also teach problem solving through sustainability challenges. So challenging the students to develop innovative solutions to real world climate problems, such as reducing waste or improving energy efficiency in their homes and schools, to encourage participation in competition like the Eco Schools program or the National STEM Challenges. We can also have the use of media and storytelling to foster climate literacy. So introducing books and films to students, maybe documentaries, to explore climate change and its impact, such as The Lorax by Dr. Seuss or An Inconvenient Truth, which are both about climate change. They're very, very interesting. We can also use the creative writing method to encourage students to write essays, short stories, poems, imagining a future shaped by climate action or inaction. Next, of course, to incorporate school-wide sustainability practices. So establishing classroom policies that reflect climate best practices. So if we have recycling bins for papers, plastics, and maybe glass, energy saving habits like turning off lights and computers, encouraging reusable water bottles and lunch containers, creating a green team of students to advocate for sustainable practices throughout the school would be very helpful. It would be a way to make sure that this is a school-wide sustainability practice, and that students will get used to using, for example, recycling bins instead of using one bin for everything. Maybe at the same time, as an idea, the school can then cooperate with a recycling company and send the recycle bins to the recycling companies and make some kind of calculation of how much energy did we save, how good it is in the terms of climate change, and so on. So there's many, many interesting ideas. If you have any of them, please write them in the chat box. Another way is to connect to global movements. So aligning lessons with global environmental movements. For example, we have Earth Day. Instead of having Earth Day in school as a normal day, we can have Earth Day is a day full of learning about climate change challenges, climate change activities, and so on. Fridays for Future or World Environment Day to highlight the importance of collective action. Encourage participation in virtual forums or pen pal programs with students in other countries working on climate initiatives as well. So before I go on to the next video does not have a sound. The next video is basically a website made by NASA. I want to show it as an example. It is a very, very nice website that includes information about climate change. It has challenges, it has activities, it has information, it has everything that is needed to make sure students would be interested in checking out climate change in the beginning. Let me show you the website. So it's climatekids.nasa.gov. It talks about many different subjects: energy, plants, animals, water. There is games and so on, the global temperature, sea level, carbon dioxide, questions such as what can trees tell us about climate change? Very, very interesting. So we can pick a topic such as weather and climate. When we move downwards, you can see that we have different cards looking like subjects which you can press on and go on to a specific topic. Yes, so if we click a guide to climate change for kids, we have all the information needed, which is also downloadable as a guide. We have questions of what's the difference between weather and climate, what is climate change. We have a short answer, and then when you go down, we have read some more, as well as little infographics that make information much more helpful. Everything explained in a very nice way, in a way that it is very, very easy for our target group kids to understand what is going on. This is pretty much the website. Please do check it out in your free time. And if you find something extremely, extremely interesting, please do share it in the chat box. Moving on. So we will be moving on to the importance of local context, tailoring climate education to community needs. Understanding and adapting climate education to address local challenges. Okay, so why does local context matter? Relevance, engagement, impact. Students connect more deeply with climate issues when they see how it impacts their own community. So a problem that is mentioned from far away, when it is far away, people don't really care about it, and of course students wouldn't care about it. However, if we show that this is something that is impacting your community, impacting your local weather, impacting you, they would take it a little bit more personal and so feel relevant to the situation. As for engagement, localized examples foster active participation and curiosity. Of course, impact, addressing local problems, encourages tangible action that benefit the immediate environment. So adapting climate education to local context. First, it's by identifying the local climate challenges. So in that specific area, in that local area, what are the climate challenges that people face? It could be urban pollution, drought, flooding, deforestation. So collaborating with local experts and organizations to gather data, and so identifying the local climate challenges. Next, to integrate community practices, so highlighting traditional practices that align with sustainability, example, rainwater harvesting. Also, studying indigenous knowledge and its role in environmental conservation, as well as focus on relevant solutions. So promoting water conservation in arid areas or planting native species to restore biodiversity. Now, community-centered learning strategies. We have fieldwork and local projects. An example, students conduct a water quality test of a nearby river. Community partnerships collaborate with NGOs or local governments for workshops and practical lessons, as well as storytelling and local narratives. Share stories of community members who are climate activists or innovators, which can be very motivational for students. Now, examples of tailored climate education. We have 3 different examples: an urban setting, so focusing on waste management, air pollution, urban greening, such as recycling campaigns in cities as an urban setting. For rural settings, an example is teaching crop rotation methods in drought-prone areas. So it basically addresses sustainable agriculture, water conservation, and deforestation. However, coastal areas, the focus is, of course, on marine ecosystems, rising sea levels, coastal protection, such as the aforementioned in the first video that we watched, the mangrove restoration projects in Southeast Asia. The benefits of localized climate education. So to have climate education localized and tailored to the place that we are living in, first, empowers communities to take ownership of their environmental challenges, encourages cultural appreciation and the preservation of sustainable traditions, as well as builds practical skills that lead to immediate and long-term impacts. Here we have a systematic review of a research done by Martha, Richard, Annie, Allison, and Willandia. Basically, this research is identifying effective climate change education strategies. So when we teach students about climate change, what are some actually really studied effective strategies? So a systematic review was done of the research, and I will not give you a headache reading the research. I will just give you the conclusion and the results. So over here, as you can see, a group of students have been having given generalized education on climate change, and they were giving localized education on climate change. So the students that have been giving localized education on climate change, as you can see, has a much higher student engagement from 60 to 90, so 30% difference. Knowledge retention, effectiveness, metrics, so the remembrance of knowledge and information, the way that it stays with them. For the ones that got the localized education was also higher, and of course, a huge difference in the behavior change, localized education. And I believe that this just shows how it's important that the local education matters and that we teach students locally based on where they live so that they would actually care about it, given that in this systematic research, we found out that not only the student engagement, the knowledge retention has increased for localized education, but also a huge behavior change in localized education, which is our main goal of teaching the students about climate change. Otherwise, there's no point. Yes, so moving on to another subtopic, we have developing critical thinking skills through climate debates and discussions. It may seem like a very easy subject. Critical thinking, what's critical thinking? But it is very, very important and very, very misinformed and misunderstood. So let's go through it. Critical thinking is the ability to analyze, evaluate, synthesize information objectively and systematically to form a well-reasoned judgment or decision, involving questioning assumptions, identifying biases, considering multiple perspectives before arriving at a specific conclusion. There are key characteristics of critical thinking, which are reflection, analysis, reasoning, evaluation, and interpretation. So Critical thinking is very important, but what is the reason that it's important? It's because when it comes to the subject of climate education, and we're only talking about climate education and climate change education, climate change involves interconnected factors. So it involves economics, science, politics, ethics. Critical thinking helps students navigate complex subjects in relation to climate change in a way that it makes it easier to understand and comprehend. So promoting informed decision making. Students can learn to assess climate policies, renewable energy technology, and lifestyle changes to make evidence-based decisions rather than decisions that don't have any kind of evidence. Another last reason why it's essential is that it counteracts misinformation. So the climate crisis is plagued by misinformation and denial. So many different people, you know, there are some people that says, oh, it doesn't exist. There is no such thing as climate change. So inclusion of critical thinking for students that are so young is so important to make sure that they have this foundation level of thinking that enables the students to differentiate facts from myths and identify credible from non-credible resources. Encourages problem solving. These are other little reasons why it is essential. It encourages problem solving. So obviously climate change requires innovative solutions. Critical thinkers can develop creative strategies to mitigate and adapt to its impacts. It fosters global citizenship by understanding diverse perspectives and ethical implications. Students become responsible citizens who can advocate for sustainable practices, as well as prepares for leadership. Leaders in climate action requires the ability to analyze data, communicate effectively, and make tough decisions under uncertainty. Now, we will be taking a little break.